Hey everyone, welcome to West Coast to East Coast, your podcast on the latest news in Canadian immigration and the latest tips on the IELTS, CELPIP, and PTE language proficiency tests. My name is Maria, and I'm a certified Canadian English teacher and language exam expert here to help you get the band scores you need.
And my name is Olena Weber, and I'm regulated Canadian immigration consultant. So today we're talking about exciting topic, AI in immigration and in English testing.
That's right. Really interesting one, actually. Kind of a newer topic. I don't think many people are talking about this.
Yes, absolutely. Well, actually about AI in immigration, there are a lot of consultants who are talking about this because AI really became super common for IRCC to use when they process certain types of applications. So a lot of immigration consultants, they had to really learn how AI works, right? Because then you know how to submit the documents.
Right.
But I was surprised to hear that the new PTE test is AI assessed.
Yeah, that's true.
So I don't think a lot of people, and you'll know better, but I don't think a lot of people are talking about it.
No, a lot of people are not talking about this. It's not very well known. The Pearson test, the new PTE language proficiency test, it's a fairly new test that is accepted now by, the IRCC for your immigration process. So before, it was just the IELTS general training test or the CELPIP test for your language test. And we're talking about the English side here, of course. But now the PTE exam is also accepted if you want to take a test, or if you have to take a test for your permanent residency. And we here at English for Canada are specialized in all three. And the big difference between how you are assessed between these three tests is that the PTE exam does not use human examiners when testing you for your speaking and writing skills. It actually uses a machine, an algorithm, AI, to determine your final score.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's just absolutely, mind-blowing how we progressed to this. but yeah, and then, it becomes a question of like kind of fairness, right? And that's that kind of stuff. But we'll talk about it in a bit in today's episode. Before we jump into that, let's talk as usual about recent immigration updates that happened in the past week.
Let's do it.
Yeah, so in the past week, we had another crazy update from IRCC when the minister announced that they're going to cap, first time ever in Canadian history, they're going to cap temporary residents. And they actually going to establish quota on temporary residents. So usually it's like very common that Canada establishes yearly immigration level plans for permanent residency, but they never established it for temporary residency. And ultimately what ended up happening is that because permanent residency has always been limited by numbers and temporary residency has never been limited by numbers, we ended up with so many temporary residents on work permits, study permits in Canada, and not that many permanent residents. So now they decided simply to balance the system, right? Because you cannot have in Canada, like 5 million temporary residents, but only 500,000 permanent residents. You know what I mean? Like they need to balance, they need to make sense of it. So I think it's overall, like it is a good thing for Canada to just balance their policies and to make sure that, we see in Canada as a balanced society and that temporary residents have that opportunity to apply for PR. But of course, this announcement comes as a surprise to many because ultimately it makes people worried, of course, like if they're going to cap temporary residents, and that means workers of entering to Canada, right? Not only international students, but workers and visitors.
And visitors as well.
And everybody. So temporary residence is a study, work, visitor, right? So
can that include tourists?
Yeah. Because a lot of
Oh,
tourists come here and they would stay here, like, and they would extend their tourist status, and they would essentially live in Canada for like years on tourist visa, and that person needs to be accounted for in a sense of the Canadian population and just like general like Canadian like immigration plan,
oh,
right?
wow. I had no idea about that one. So you're learning something here already.
Yeah, no, it's pretty crazy. So I don't know how exactly they're going to do it and what are the parameters there. But anyways, so they're going to cap it, and they said that they will publish all the levels in September.
Mhm.
But they are like right now already taking all the steps to establish those numbers. So basically, to come to Canada as a worker, student, or even as a tourist is not going to be as easy.
Right.
And and it creates panic, of course. There is a lot of panic. So you'll have to go work harder to come to Canada on temporary status. But the good news and silver lining here is that the Canadian government realizes that they need to give opportunity to people who are already here, so temporary residents, workers, students, visitors who are in Canada, to transition to PR.
Mhm.
So they're talking about introducing more in Canada express entry draws.
Okay. So that's the Canadian experience class, right?
Yes, that's Canadian experience class and provincial nominations. So usually that's how Canadian government would really make sure that they are drawing a lot of immigrants who are already in Canada. They would just give more opportunities, like maybe larger draws, lower points for Canadian experience class, and then they would give more allocation to provinces. So they would say, for example, to Ontario, and I don't know the numbers, but in 2023, Ontario allocation for nomination was 16,500. So now that the government is talking about, okay, let's transition more people who are in Canada, transition them to PR. So it's possible that they will say, you know what, Ontario, now your allocation is 30,000, right?
Okay.
So it can be possible, but the most probable and the most like just logical way to do it, as you said before we hit the button of record, is that if they just keep doing, or they start doing Canadian experience class express entry draws.
Right.
Because those are draws that for people with 1 year of Canadian experience, so most of those people are in Canada, right?
Now, why do you think this new shift to prioritizing people who are already in Canada, and maybe why are they making this or putting this cap on the number of temporary residents? Like, what's the purpose of putting a cap on the number of people they are bringing into Canada? What's the purpose of this? Why is this happening, in your opinion?
So it's because realistically, the influx of people in Canada is way more than what Canada can handle in terms of infrastructure. And also because people are not evenly settling across all the Canadian territory. Yeah. They're concentrated in like GTA, Toronto area, Vancouver, Montreal, right? So those big urban centers. Right. And that is not necessarily great. So the government is trying to just, as I said, balance things out. And if we have big influx of people, then we talked about this, like then we have, housing crisis, lack of just simple places in schools, right? Yeah. And if we try to spread the people out like throughout the years, it's just everybody wins, because Canada and Canada's infrastructure can actually accommodate those immigrants and those temporary residents.
Well, I can give you an example. I was born in Vancouver, in downtown, but when I was a little girl, maybe around like 4 or 5, my parents moved to a suburb in Vancouver called Richmond. Richmond is where the airport is. Now, Richmond is a little island, and when I was growing up, and it used to be mostly houses and farms, and we had one Richmond hospital. Since I was a kid, it has changed a lot. Like, it now is, predominantly condominiums. All the houses and the farms that used to be there when I was a kid, I used to ride my bike on the farms. They've all been torn down. And imagine acres and acres of blueberry farms. Now it's condominiums, like towers and towers and towers. So what used to be one family on a farm with acres of land is now hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. But we still only have one hospital. They never expand. They never built another hospital. Yeah. They are only expanding the hospital now, and they're still building it. So it's the same tiny little hospital, but the city has expanded. Like, I'm not sure what the census is. If I look it up, I remember when I was a kid, maybe Richmond was like, I don't know, 30,000 people. I'd have to Google it, but it's definitely expanded, probably by 10. The Richmond Hospital cannot meet the demands of how much the city has expanded, for sure.
No, absolutely. I understand. We used to live here in Ontario, in Milton. It's like suburbs of Toronto. And Milton used to be, so Corey, my husband, who is also immigration consultant, he grew up around the area. And he says is that like when he was growing up, like Milton used to be like, it's a 5,000 people city, like 5,000 people. It's like one street, that's it. Right now, it's actually one of the most common town or most desirable towns to live in. And it's 120,000, but it's the same story. The hospital, even though they expanded it, but not to accommodate like 120,000. Exactly. So it looks like, even visually, it looks very small, you know?
Yeah. Because they're building vertically, right? But we can't. They're not expanding the amenities and the hospitals, and even the. Another example here in Vancouver is in 2010 when they built the Canada Line, which is the train from Richmond to Vancouver, the transportation, the train. When they built that for the Olympics, they didn't expect Vancouver to grow as much as it was going to. And that train is always so packed. You try to get on that train from Vancouver to Richmond in rush hour, it's just so packed. And the way they designed the train, it's only got three little tracks, three little wagons or whatever. It's so packed, that train. They should have made it bigger and longer, but they didn't expect Vancouver to grow so much in 10 years that they didn't make it big enough. And now they're having to expand in different ways. The city just grew faster than, the city planners expected it to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's really in a short period of time, because if you look into statistics, it's actually like started from about 2019. And which is like only 5 years ago. And 2019, like if you look at just graph, like it just goes like this, literally, like it's so insane. And like it's just, we need to balance the system in a long term. That's a correct decision, really. And that's just what Canada needs. However, in a short term, that is very frustrating for a lot of us, right? Immigrants. And it is very unexpected as well, because I feel like Canada has been taking these like super drastic steps in a very short time frame. When we had just in February announcement of international student cap, then we had spousal open work permits. I don't know actually if you knew about this. Spouses of international students cannot apply for work permits anymore unless those students are masters, or PhD, which is insane. And then now they announced temporary resident levels, which is like caps, right, for like foreign workers, which we of course need, but they just want to balance the system. Now the silver lining, of course, is that in Canada, so what they realized is that, okay, we're making this ceiling of whatever number of temporary residents that Canada is going to accept for the future, right? So that's for 2025, 2024 as well, 2024, 2025, 2026, usually they do it for 3 years, and they do the ceiling, but they understand that they already people are physically in Canada already. And that's a separate issue that they need to figure out, okay, how do we deal with these people who are already in Canada? Because the points are so high, they cannot apply for PR. They are here, But, so of course that just creates environment for illegal immigration, because it's really hard to kick people out, right?
Right.
And, so they need to approach this smartly. They cannot just simply say like, okay, you can't extend your statuses, you can't apply for PR, like just get out. Like it's not smart logic. It's just because it's going to create that environment for illegal immigration, for people to stay in Canada like without statuses, right? And just like keep living here. So that's why they need to approach it smartly. And they already said that, yes, like they're looking into in Canada draws. I don't think it's going to be anything like miracle 75 draw or anything like that. But I do think that, honestly, I think what's going to happen that they just keep doing Canadian experience class draws. And just because it's going to be only Canadian experience class, the points will be dropping for them, for people who are in Canada. And it will just be reasonable. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be like 400 points, but I think it's going to be like 480 or something like that, like, which is still very reasonable. And a lot of people, most of people can score it, I would say. So, that's definitely good news. So we'll see what's going to happen next. Definitely lots of updates this year.
Good. So that's some good news there, because the purpose is to transition those who are already here. So we will be seeing opportunities to transition people who are on their temporary residency to permanent residency, but we're not going to be seeing as many people coming in.
Exactly.
New temporary residency. Okay.
Yeah, but that's to that point is that we will be seeing probably new opportunities to get an invitation to apply, or maybe, who knows, maybe new programs. For that, everybody, it's again the same story. Everybody has to have their English tests available, because if you are in Canada right now and you don't have English tests, then imagine tomorrow program opens up, or they do a draw for Canadian experience class or Canadian residents. Now they actually can do the draws by your postal code. This is a new thing. They never used to do that, but now you put your postal code in and they can actually draw you by your postal code as well. But you cannot get into any sort of draws, any sort of programs, unless you have a valid English test. So that's number one priority, is to take your CELPIP, take your IELTS or PTE, and ultimately maximize your scores, like score as high as humanly possible for you to score, because that is your competitive advantage when it comes to, because you are competing for your PR place, right? Exactly. You are competing for your PR spot. So the higher you score, the more likely government is going to invite you for PR.
Right, exactly. Got to get those points up.
Yes. Okay, let's talk about AI.
Yes, let's talk about it.
All right. So first, let's talk a little bit about AI for immigration, and then we'll talk about AI for English testing.
Sure.
So for immigration, and there are a lot of I think similarities. Doesn't matter how AI is applied, whether for English testing or for immigration, it's still kind of the same concept, is that it's not a human being who is assessing your either skills or documents or case or situation, right? And it comes with its own challenges, because there are mistakes unavoidably, because it's just a computer, right?
Right.
And also there is a matter of calibration. So for immigration, for example, they have been calibrating those AI algorithms for I don't know how many, 3 years, I think now. And it takes a very long time to actually get the system to work the way that they want it to work. And I think with PTE, it also may be similar, because they will start doing it and then they will see, okay, we can improve here, right? Because it takes a lot of time to improve those algorithms. But yeah, in immigration, IRCC started using them 2021, I think. They actually been using them for a long time, just not to that extent. And they almost, majority, I would say, visitor visas are processed with AI. And spousal sponsorship in Canada, a lot of it is processed with AI. And it's only a first stage. So it's not, the decision is done by an officer. So it's still done by a human being. but AI kind of assesses preliminary information and AI provides like recommendation. So the officer just needs to kind of either agree or not with that recommendation, like just simply speaking.
Okay. Have you seen in your experience many like mistakes made by the AI?
All the time. I would say it's more mistakes than actually correct decisions.
Really?
It's so bad. Honestly, like it's pretty bad. Yeah. But at the same time,
trustworthy.
Sorry?
It's not very trustworthy then.
It's not, no. But it's the only way to maintain processing times, the way that they are. And because, the number of immigrants, it's really, really high volumes that we have,
Right.
and you need to process all of those applications. So PR applications are actually like super, super high volume applications. For example, spousal sponsorship application, if you were to like put it on paper, because it used to be on paper, it would be packaged like this thick, like this big package, and it would weigh like roughly like 2 pounds. That's how much paperwork for spousal sponsorship.
Wow.
But it's processed. So the officer let me put it the other way. The officer is expected by the government to process 10 to 12 applications per day.
What?
So
and like humans also get tired too, right? Like you naturally make human mistakes too.
That's why you need AI, because AI would they would put a lot of information through that. AI would check a lot of like inconsistencies and mistakes, and so it is a huge advantage, and that's why our spousal sponsorship processing time in Canada, it's super low. It's like 3-4 months, which is like the lowest in the world. Like Canada actually has the lowest in the world processing times for immigration. And as much as people complain about it, but Canada is just the best in terms of processing times. So it is a big advantage. So for example, spousal sponsorships, they are low risk applications because those people are usually like already married or common law, and they're just generally considered to be low risk. There is usually not much fraud going on with like spousal sponsorship inside Canada. So that's why they put AI on this application type. And it's been like very successful and actually benefited applicants in these fast processing times. But AI for visitor is like a nightmare because it doesn't like work properly, and it works in these like huge centers like China and India, where like the volume of applications is like millions, right, of applications.
Wow.
And it's just so like randomized, in my opinion. Like yeah, it's a bit crazy. But I've seen there is a lawyer, Stephen Murrant, and he posts a lot about this kind of stuff. He's super passionate about like all these statistics and how AI works. And I think he's in BC as well. And so follow him on Twitter. Like he's really, really good. But he posted like all of these statistics, like kind of what triggers AI would perceive as a kind of a less risk or more risk. So for example, if you for visitor visa application, you put more than X number of X amount of dollars. So I don't remember what it is, but let's say if you put more than $50,000 that you have, then the system would guide you towards less risky application type, right? So then it would direct the officer to like a more favorable decision. But there are a lot of like examples like this, right? But visitor visa is just, it's just not working properly the way that it should be. They're of course fixing it and trying to do everything they can. Like I don't really blame the government, because I wouldn't expect the government to process like millions of applications, because it is a huge volume of people that are applying to come to Canada as visitors. So they're trying their best, but still it's not, it's not fair, that's for sure. In PR applications, it is fair, because in PR applications, they're using it to a lesser extent. So it's still a lot of human involvement in PR applications. But temporary applications like visitor, or like super simple applications like simple extensions inside Canada, they really like it's an AI heavy. It's a lot of AI involvement, but there are like a lot of mistakes. But for example, like
I have a
inside
question.
Canada,
When there is a mistake that's made, I've been told that the person who's applying has to start the application all over again from the beginning.
yeah.
Now, if the mistake is from or because of AI and not on the candidate or the applicant side, do they still have to do that all over again?
Yeah.
That's not
There
fair,
is no
though.
way. Like there is the mechanism that the government has is it's just like unsustainable for them to like reopen applications just again because of the volume of applications. So if somebody is going to say, okay, you made a mistake because it's AI, then yeah, technically the officer can decide to reopen. And from time to time it happens. Like for us, like we did study permit application. And it was actually not a mistake on AI. It was just a human kind of decision. And we argued with that, and they did reopen the application and they approved it. So, but that's like, it doesn't happen super often, but it does happen. But it's just like if everybody starts doing it, like they cannot like just sustain the amount of requests. They need to hire so many people to do this, right? So that's why it's just easier for everybody if you just resubmit application and write a letter saying that, listen, like my previous one was refused because of AI. It's just faster this way, other than arguing with them that like you made a mistake, right? Because government also doesn't want to recognize any mistakes.
It just seems so unfair for the person who's applying to have to regather all their documents, do everything all over again because a computer made a mistake when it wasn't the person who was applying. I mean, if I were in that position, I know I would feel really frustrated.
It's ultimately unfair, like 100%. Especially like specifically visitor visas is just the most unfair process for sure, because it's like a Russian roulette. Like it's just luck of the draw, like toss of a coin. That's it. Of course, you can make your best to like improve that application and to like have a very good chance, but still, it's the toss of the coin. So, so yeah, like it's very, very, very unfair. But like at this point, it's just that's what it is.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about how the AI works for the PTE exam. So the PTE test, the way they kind of, I'm going to say the word advertise it, but the way they say that the benefit of having the AI is that by not having a human examiner, you will get your results faster. And for example, on the IELTS test, there are 2 sections to the test. You have to take the 3 sections of the exam, like the writing, the listening, and the reading, and then you have to wait for your speaking test, which is held in person with an examiner. So with the PTE test, it's just one test done altogether. So they also say that it's a lot faster. You just take the test in one sitting, get it over with.
So it's the same kind of concept that it's like faster, but you know, the quality, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So exactly. So they advertise that it's faster. You get the test done faster in one sitting. And they also say that you can send the scores for free to as many institutions as you would like, quicker to get your scores as well. Because when you have a human that has to test your results, there's a whole process that's involved. Like you have to hand in your scores. Then there's a process where those scores have to, in the back end, get sent to an examiner. They have to score it, send in their assessment, send it back to the manager. Then the manager has to put it in the system. And there's a whole back end system. But when it's AI, it's just goes through the computer, goes through the algorithm, and within minutes, your score, you can get your score. So it's faster. So that's also the benefit.
So how long? I don't understand. How long does it take to get your results?
The website says easier to share your scores for free with as many institutions as you choose. I believe it could just be within 2 days. Let's see. I think it's just within 2 days you can get your scores. I'm going to double check on the website again. I think it's just a couple of days though.
Yeah, but I think CELPIP right now is pretty fast as well. I know that my clients are getting CELPIP really fast.
It's pretty fast. And I know with the IELTS, it's also a pretty fast turnaround within a week as well. So it's not that much of a difference. I know when
Like it would be, I mean, it would be cool if it was instant, you know, like you finish the test and it's like this, like within like an hour or so.
Like I'm on the PTE website right now, and it just says we're faster. Automated scoring. Automated scoring means it's quicker to book, quicker to get your scores, and easier to share your scores for free with as many institutions as you choose. So it doesn't say how fast it is. It just says it's quicker. So I'm not quite sure.
Well, we'll see. I don't know anyone yet who has taken the exam. Like they're doing this in Canada. Like that, are they doing?
Yeah, they're downtown. But the way it works is it's pretty interesting. I mean, I've studied the assessment side of it inside and out, because I've worked as an examiner for many years for different types of exams from all over the world. And I was, very interested to learn one thing. How is a machine going to assess a candidate's tone of voice? Because in all these tests, the IELTS, the CELPIP, the ELT, and all these exams, one of the things that an examiner is always listening for is your ability to adjust your speaking style and your writing style to the situation and to the person you are speaking to. So can you adjust your writing language and your intonation and everything you say to the person? So is it a friend? Is it a manager? And to the situation. Is the situation a serious situation, or is it an informal situation? So everything you say has to be appropriate. And this is a very important thing that you should consider when you're taking your IELTS, CELPIP, or PTE test. Because why? These tests are assessing your ability to communicate in everyday life situations at work or in your everyday life at home or in your community. So imagine if your manager asks you to prepare a letter or an email, and you make a very informal, or you write a very informal email, that would be considered inappropriate. Or maybe you're writing an email to a friend and you write something very formal. It would be very awkward to read. That's part of the assessment on the IELTS and CELPIP. And I was curious when I started, preparing to examine and test and all these things for the PTE, how an algorithm or a computer would test the nuances, the subtleties of someone's emotions, because how can a computer really test that?
Sorry to interrupt you, but I'm just thinking, like, as you're talking about like ChatGPT, like, did you play around with ChatGPT?
I have,
because I've seen like online that like people are saying that like, for example, if you do the prompt, you can say like formal tone, or like be friendly, or be whatever. So it understands the tones, I guess.
Yeah, it does, but it's not as good as a human still.
Yeah,
still not as good. So what the PTE has done, and to kind of circumvent this, is that expert test developers, they created tests that reflect real life scenarios. So they created tests including essays, multiple choice, and story writing exercises. Then they asked thousands of people from around the world to answer these questions. Then they evaluated those responses based on a variety of different assessment criteria that they have, like grammar, pronunciation, content, very similar to what an examiner would do on the IELTS or CELPIP. Then they took those same ratings that they gave for those responses, they took those ratings and they used that as sample data, and they put those ratings as data into the algorithm, into the machine. So to sum it up, what happens is when you take your PTE Core Test, whatever you say or write is instantaneously compared to thousands of past responses and how they were scored. So it's a comparison. So if you write something, it's compared to how somebody else was evaluated. Personally, I'm still not 100% convinced, because I still think that a human will be able to assess someone's tone of voice a little bit better, and whether or not someone has memorized a response more than a computer can. but I'm curious to see more evidence. I want to see more of our students going through this to see more proof in the pudding. And I'll have to see more and more students taking both tests to really see comparisons of a student taking the CELPIP and then taking the PTE and seeing how both come out at the end to make a more, confident assessment as to how accurate the computer really is.
Yes. But I think it's just if that's how it works and they're basing it on, a certain database of those responses with time, I think, as this PTE test exists, wouldn't it be like easier to figure out like how the computer works and like easier to like push on those like pinpoints and like just score higher?
What's the idea? They say that they currently have 678,000 examiner responses in the algorithm.
Sorry, how many?
They currently have over 678,000 examiner responses fed in the algorithm. So that's the data that they have. So when you make or you write a response or you say a speaking response, your response is going to be compared against those previous responses and how they were scored. And then, that comparison will be your score. That's, I guess, an average, or the computer will say, okay, that's how they were scored. Make a comparison. It's going to listen to you. It's going to look at your writing. And I don't know how the machine does it, but AI will make that comparison very quickly.
And the exam is done at the exam center, right? Like
you still have to go to a physical exam center and do the test in person. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yes.
I haven't met, as I said, I haven't met anyone who's taken it yet, but I'm sure I will. And it's very interesting to see how this unfolds because, it can go either way, I think.
I've been studying this test inside and out for the past few months to understand the test format and how candidates are going to be tested. And there are still two things that hold steady between the IELTS, CELPIP, and PTE. Tone of voice is still important. And one thing that they still are doing on the PTE, if you use memorized responses or pre-prepared responses, you are still disqualified. So what that means is the algorithm, I'm sure, can quickly identify responses that look exactly the same.
Exactly. It's the same as for immigration, right? So they use, the same AI and it's like plagiarism software, right? So if we're talking about agents in India who are submitting literally, like, I'm not even joking, like tens of thousands of applications per year, study permits per year that are based on the same like submission letter template. Like it's the same letter, they're just changing the name and they're changing the like institution number, but the letter is still the same. Of course, the government like right away identifies this because it's a basic plagiarism software, right? And that's a part of that AI that assesses your application because ultimately, the officer would see that, okay, this is not a real letter because it's been used 10 billion times before.
Yes, exactly. One of the first things an examiner does is kind of look at, is any of this not real? Because then they can kind of discard this. Like, is this not authentic? Because if it's not, they can't use it as an authentic piece of English to assess. Because if you're trying to prove or test somebody's English, if some of it's not theirs, then at least that portion cannot be assessed. On the CELPIP, it can get flagged. On the PTE, it actually says that pre-prepared or memorized material can get scored as 0. And so I'm assuming that the algorithm, if past responses have that same cookie cutter sentence over and over again, the computer's going to identify and go, oh, I see a memorized response, must score a 0.
I'm sure it is because it's not like it's very logical to, disqualify those, right? So no, absolutely. I think, and that's the right thing to do as well, right? Because you should not really be doing that because that's not an indication how well you know English. And
it's cheating.
Yeah, it is cheating, right? Yeah, that's pretty crazy. So we'll see how it's gonna work. So you guys already started PTE
Yes, I'm
classes?
almost done my self-study course. I'm just
Oh.
wrapping up the final touches on it. So really soon you're going to see a PTE self-study course out and about, and I will be launching that very soon. And yeah, I've been just preparing everything out there for you to make sure that you're ready for that.
That's really good. Yes, I love it. I know you have CELPIP self-study, right? And
Yes.
do you have IELTS or no?
That's also coming out very soon. I've been doing a lot of work to make sure I'm always focused on quality. So I want to make sure all the videos and everything's edited properly. So almost out of the oven, my friends.
Yeah, because I know your CELPIP self-study has been very successful. Lots of my clients taking it and they passed their CELPIP really, really well. Just today, I had my clients sending me exam results with like all 10s, and it's all maxed out in CELPIP. So yeah,
and of course we have our tutoring. So if you don't want to do the self-study, we have our personalized tutoring. So if you want to enroll with me for PTE or IELTS CELPIP tutoring, you can always do that as well.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's not self-study is not for everybody, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
I know it's not for me. Like, it's definitely
everybody's different. So I offer both options because sometimes people just don't have time to do personalized tutoring, or they just want to really do like an intensive. So it's really, I have both options.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
All right, my friends. I think that was a great overview of of AI in the world of immigration and language testing.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much, guys. And then we'll be back next week.
Yes, we will be back next week with more updates for you.
Yes. Okay. Bye-bye.
I'll see you all next week. Bye.